Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this episode I will be installing the TST Industries WORX Airbox system on this Yamaha YZF R7. We have the intake system, which is comprised of just a few parts. The outer shell is carbon fiber. The filtration system is an all-encompassing filter sock made of high flow material. It is meant to be oiled. It does come to you oiled already. In future services, you will be required to strip it down with soap and then re-oil it. The back section is basically this, where we've built in the funnels, the intake tract, into the enclosure instead of keeping them separate like Yamaha did from the factory. This makes for fewer parts, easier disassembly, reassembly, service, things like that. We have assembly clamps, and then we also have a relocation wire for your intake temperature sensor. Now, when you are sucking in a bunch more air, you will need to do something about tuning. You can either go and get a custom tune from a local shop that has a dyno, it has a reputable race mechanic that can set you up, or you could send us your ECU, we'll flash it for you and turn it back around within a day or so and get it back on the way to you. You plug it back in, boom, off to the races, high performance bike. We have killed off 75% of the component mass. You take away this giant polypropylene box with these heavy funnels in it and all the components within, and you're doing away with 3.175 pounds of mass and putting back on only 0.8. So that's a 2.38 pound savings just from doing this. Now, how did we go about designing this part? That, along with very deep detail dive, will be included in our feature video that is available on our YouTube channel, also tstindustries.com. So please watch that there if you need more information. I know I seem very amped here because I really want to show you guys how this thing goes on and how it looks afterwards. It's going to look killer. It's going to replace this whole area. It's actually going to be visible from outside the bike. You're going to have this nice carbon fiber look, and you're also going to have that additional growl from the open exhaust that's unrestricted by all of these components here. Let's grab some tools, let's get started. Since this is a race-oriented modification, most of you guys will be working with a race bike that has race plastics. In this video, we've procured a street specimen. This will be destined for track use only soon, so I will have to remove some street bodywork. I will not be commenting on the steps necessary to do that because you guys will likely be working with simpler bodywork, and all you have to do is match the nakedness state of the bike when I'm done. So let's get started. At this point, we are ready to get under the tank. The tank will need to be lifted off. I have seen people at the racetrack, whether for track days or even for race purposes, still use this set of fairings. Not everybody uses a tank cover. So we will kick back in here with commentary. We'll need to take this off. There's one single bolt up front holding the tank bracket on. It does have a 12mm head, so we will be using a socket on that, and two 5mm hex on each side here and here. Let's get those out. Now we will have the fuel sender connection, the actual fuel connection here behind this area. And then we also have an aerator and an overflow hose up forward more. If we slip off those hoses, our access becomes easier. So gotta get under here and slip them off. These could be a little tough if they get baked on. There are two of them, and there are two fittings sticking out of there. They do have clamps, and if they do get baked on, even when you take the clamp down like I did on this one, sometimes they just require you to grab and twist, and that will break them loose. Now we have a little bit more freedom here. Don't want to pull up too hard because we do have an electrical connector and a fuel line, and you don't want to kink that fuel line. Walk over to the other side so I could make for a better demonstration here. So our fuel sender pump connector looks like this. We will reiterate this a little bit later when we take the tank off. And then the fuel connection has a brown clip over it, and then it opens up these two windows that you need to squeeze together. Tank comes off. Here are the things I want to reiterate real quick because I didn't have a good opportunity to show you guys what I was doing. This is the connector, electrical connector for the fuel pump fuel sender unit. Press on this release, slip it off, and this goes onto the fitting that actually pressurizes the fuel into the intake system. This needs to pop off this way, and there is a press tab on this side and the opposite side that need to be pressed in unison together to release from that fitting. Be careful when manipulating this hose, you don't want to kink it. Now, we are going to have to remove the other side of this hose. It's a different color, but it's the same system. You slip a black clip off, press the same type of tabs together, and that comes off on the other side. And it's quite a bit more cumbersome here because there are other things in the way. Now keep in mind, this may be full of gas still, so you want to make sure that you don't dump it all over everywhere and put it into a bucket or some other safe place. All right, now let's go ahead and undo this clamp here. This hose will need to slip off as well. This one was nicely loose, no big deal. I am going to prep this clamp upstream a little bit for reinsertion onto our new airbox. Now we'll grab Phillips screwdriver, remove these 4 fasteners here from the lid. Lid will come off. All right, now we'll have to hop down to the side, remove these panels and some screws from the side here. Using a 6mm Allen, I will remove these 3 fasteners. Now we've exposed this 10mm screw here. I've already removed these components from the other side. The aft portion of our airbox is already loose. So now I will grab a 4mm Allen and I will loosen the clamps that are holding the OEM velocity stacks onto the intake, onto the throttle body. All right, now with those guys loose, we should be able to pry towards the rear, work it back and forth a little bit, And now this airbox has come off. I'm gonna push these out. Do have these sleeve washers in there, one on each side. We will deform these grommets and push them in, pulling from the inboard side, and get them out of there. Now, this is as loose as it's gonna get for us. To extract this out of the frame, we have too many encumbrances here. So we will need to loosen the clamps on our throttle body and carefully move that out of the way so that we have enough space to get this thing out of here, either this way or to the left. Let's first make sure that we're not taking any of these hoses with the OEM intake. They are clamped in here. They do have a 4mm Allen that is holding a clamp onto the airbox. The easier approach here will be to temporarily take these clamps off and just pull down until we clear those out. This way we don't need to keep track of another fastener. All right, I'm going to replace the clamps here. All right, and these did live in here in this loop of wire. I'm going to put them back, get them ready for myself for later. All right. So, in order for us to be successful here, I want to minimize the opportunity for harming any electrical connections or anything that they are connected to. So we will be taking off all of the electrical connectors that are hooked up to our throttle body. Okay, I have my injectors off, TPS off, and now pressure sensor. So now at this point, we do have some vacuum lines still hooked up to our intake, and we have the throttle cable hooked up here, but we will see if maybe we can just dislodge our throttle body and move it to this side and see if that creates enough space. Let's go ahead and loosen the throttle body clamps now. I'm using a 4mm Allen for this. So now with the throttle body clamps loose, I will make sure that I have enough manipulation space by pushing the aft section of the airbox down and pulling the whole thing towards the rear. Now we have some space here. Depending on how much use is on your bike, this may be baked in. Mine, I was able to coax it along, mush it back and forth, and now it actually popped out of the head. At this point, you want to make sure that you're not causing any debris to fly around, because now you have an open head. Don't want anything falling in there. Just making sure that all of my wiring is actually out of the way here so I don't snag anything. I do have that one vacuum hose here, but that's not really posing a threat to anything. All right. Throttle body is lowered. I do have some obstruction here against the airbox. I was able to manipulate it all the way to the left side here, but I don't know if this is going to be enough room. I'm going to keep trying here. I have struck out in my attempts to create enough space for the airbox to come out, so it will be necessary to remove the throttle body. I will start by removing the coolant temperature sensor here that I'm pointing to. Now, grab a 10mm box wrench, and I'm going to loosen my cable. I'm going to have to remove my cables from the throttle body. Once these guys are removed, there's only one last thing that is still mounted onto the throttle body, and that is this vacuum hose. Should be able just to slip it off. If it doesn't want to come off, we could use a set of pliers to rotate it, break it loose. Now our throttle body should be free to come out. We just have to make sure we don't damage anything on the way out. I'm gonna use a lint-free towel to block the intake holes on the head, just to make sure no debris flies in there. Now we actually have a lot more maneuverability. So the next task will be to get this thing out. It's still not going to be super easy, but we definitely have eliminated anything that may be in the way. So at this point, we'll just have to find the appropriate configuration for all of the pieces of geometry to fit on the way out. All right, I'm gonna approach this from the right side of the bike. I am gonna move away some of these hoses again. Let's see if we can make enough room here by removing this routing guide here. I think now there's enough space to turn this whole airbox in here. I will need to remove this double connector off of its keeper here, and that's a little cumbersome because the tab is on the inside. Okay, I think I've eliminated most of the snag points here. Let's see if I could turn it. There we go. Again, you will need some patience to find the right configuration. Please do not get frustrated. If you're not looking to hang on to the OEM Airbox, if you do slice off here and here, that makes this whole process vastly easier. Now, this is polypropylene, so you can just cut with a knife over and over and then bend it, it'll pop off. If you do want to hang on to it, then you will have to endure finding this origami method that will best suit your extraction here. Now we'll just make sure that we analyze everything, make sure we didn't strain any of the components here. Let's put everything back in place. I will inspect all of my connectors, make sure I didn't mess anything up here. Everything's looking good. At this point, I can plug my coolant sensor lead back in. I'm gonna take out my blockages. Get the throttle body back in place. This is basically reverse order of disassembly. You just need to make sure that it's fully seated all the way to the bottom. That is now to the bottom. Get my hose back in place. My hose actually came off. So if that happens, I'll tell you what to do here. There is a pressure sensor that this hooks up to, but we'll start by plugging it back in where it came out of on the throttle body. So this hose that leads from cylinder to intake on the head side to this sensor here came off. This end has to get inserted back onto that sensor's probing nipple. There is no clamp on it, so I'm going to insert it back on. Now it's going to be good to go. And now I will take care of reconnecting all the connectors that we took off of here. We have the TPS on the outboard right side. Snap that back in. Cylinder 2 injector. Then we have all of our sensor pack connections. The black plug in the center. And then cylinder 1 injector. Okay, all of our electrical connections are done here. This crankcase vent hose will connect to our new airbox. Now we have to go in the reverse order of disassembly on our throttle cables. I would advise that you look into your factory service manual for the method. Okay, now I have all of my connections reconnected, mechanical and electrical. Now I will use that 4mm Allen that I used before to tighten back down on the clamping for the throttle body to the head. One more time, give it a little check, make sure that it is actually bottomed out. All right, let's jump back here into this part of the compartment. We're going to need to identify and remove the temperature sensor, the intake temperature sensor. For some reason, Yamaha decided that the bike is sucking air from here. The intake tract is this far away from the sensor for the temperature, and that is appropriate for their measurements in the ECU. They have top-notch engineers. I'm not going to contest that, but for our new setup, we found that we get a much more accurate reading of the intake temperature when we take that temperature at the intake site. So we are going to move this connection. We're going to move this sensor to the inside of our airbox, and then using the extension kit, we're going to plug into here, run this harness up to the front side of the airbox and plug that sensor in. Let's get the sensor out first. This is done via Phillips. Now this entire assembly will need to be transplanted. There really is only one way to get this in here. We want to bottom it out so that it doesn't move around, and that's it. Now we do have clamps that will need to be tightened down onto the bike. So we're going to need to figure out the orientation that is best for our use. I am going to position this in a way that I could access it easily. Okay, so for my purposes, to be able to access easily from either side, I am going to have the clamp mechanical fastener portion to the top, facing outboard on each of the sides. I'm just going to tighten it to the point it's self-captive, but not pressing on the grips. We want to make sure that when we're pushing this over the intake, it'll actually deflect outwards and allow the insertion. Now this is our extension kit. I'm going to plug it in now so I can route it. Get my hose seated on here. Pop the new intake on till it bottoms out and pops. Nice and easy. I'm going to have to figure out routing for this guy. Up the middle in between the two intake tracts is probably the best routing for it. I'm going to go up above here, in between the frame and the loom is probably best because it'll be self-captive for us in this position. Follow all of the harnessing here. it will terminate right where its receiving connector is. Plug them together. Boom, good to go. Now I'll just jam it in here for safekeeping. This looks pretty good to me. Nice. Now I will tighten down on the clamps holding our airbox onto the throttle body. You don't want to over tighten these. You are squeezing thermoplastic against metal. If you stress it too much, you may fracture it. And all you're trying to do is cause the grip to come together. There is a channel, kind of like a tongue and groove setup in the circumferential direction. So they do come together and they stay locked. All you have to do is exert a little bit of pressure, so that's about it. This whole assembly is light enough that in vibration, it will not slip off if installed just like I showed, especially with the addition of this hose here damping that vibration. You should be good to go. All right, let's get our hose back in here. Make sure it snaps on and then push the black clip like this one on. That prevents it from being able to expand and snap off. In preparation for the tank replacement, I'm going to make sure that my fuel sender fuel pump plug is in place here. I'm going to make sure that this clip is off the locked position, enabling us to get the tank back on. I'm going to reroute my hoses the way they were before I disturbed them. All right, let's grab the tank. Before I go any further, I would like to make sure all the systems are working properly. Power this guy up. All right, we are good to go. Now, the remainder of this process will be the reverse order of disassembly. So we'll cut all of my commentary and just proceed with the steps. And then we'll talk again at outro. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. We've ditched this large airbox here in favor of our new WORX TST Airbox that you see here. This took me 3 hours while contorting myself and changing video setups to best show you the angles. So I think in reality, this should take about 2 hours, and we only use basic tools, nothing really out of the ordinary. I wouldn't rate this installation as a very easy one, but especially if you have race fairings and a race harness, this should be a lot easier. No sweat for most guys that are racing and working on their bikes. Now, I do want to go over a couple things. What you see here is a stock suspension on this bike. This is the as delivered by Yamaha shock. On our race bike, we actually use an aftermarket linkage with an Öhlins piggyback shock. So the reservoir is on the shock itself in this area. We've designed this airbox to work with those components and not generate any interactions between those parts. So rest assured that if you have an aftermarket shock, it should fit in there without any impact to the airbox, no problem. Now, how often should you service the filter? Well, it really comes down to the conditions that you're running this bike in. If the conditions are very dirty, like let's say Chuckwalla Valley Raceway, there's a lot of dust and sand, you will likely have to do it more often. Inspect your components. As you can see, you have a direct shot to look at it. If it looks dirty, take it out, clean it out, oil it up, put it back in. Now, to take out this airbox, it'll be cake compared to the OEM Airbox. You'll be able to take it out, service it, put it back in, probably within 15 minutes, no big deal. If you want to know what to service it with, typically we do sell oiling kits, cleaning and oiling kits in our store. If you want to get something locally, you could go to your AutoZone or any other auto parts supply and get yourself a K&N kit. They have a detergent and an oil that you can use safely with this system, no sweat. Choice is yours there. This airbox is more prone to water aspiration. As you can see, there's nothing stopping water from getting in. Now, most of the time, you're moving forward fast, the slipstream around the bike will take water away and channel it away from this area. There will be some splashback here, but if you still have the OEM fender and the sub tray in place, that will likely take care of most of the splashback, no big deal. The bottom of the airbox is open. If anything were to enter it, any liquid were to enter it, it will sink down and fly away from the intake tract. The only real implication of water entry is during cleaning. Don't point a hose at it. If you're gonna use a pressure washer or something like that, make sure that this area is covered and not accessible to that water spray. Other than that, I think I covered everything else. I'm excited to get this thing on the dyno and do some extra pulls we're gonna do with this particular exhaust and create a nice set of tunes for you guys to enjoy with the airbox and different exhausts. Check out our website, tstindustries.com. That's where you'll find all of these parts and all the technology that I've mentioned in this video. Give us a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you guys later.